presidential inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women.
Some questions, however, can go too far, becoming culturally insensitive or even racist.
Savage
One
and sexual,
researcher
or is it
says
noble
some
sort
of
of
these
princess?
costumes
And
can
to really
contribute
phase
to
upon that
violence
idea where women can
against
only be
Indigenous women.
We felt there was a gap. And there's been a gap for a very long time for First Nations women. People were able to vote. Everybody in the country were able to vote before First Nations women. There is much discrimination against First Nations women.
As Indigenous people and as makers, like, our work is consistently being appropriated and profited from by non-Indigenous peoples, and that's something that is has been true to the whole trajectory of colonial history and present.
What had started out as 12 people in this chat soon turned into 75, all with similar experience and frustration with the rampant appropriation, hypersexualized and misrepresentation of Indigenous women, the homogenization of our distinct cultures as Indigenous peoples, and specifically as Indigenous women.
The Indian Act divided our communities, and it made the power politics very uneven, and it knew what it was doing, because what it did is it took all of the power out of the female hands.
There's this conversation that was happening online amongst a group of Indigenous women because this fashion company had recently appropriated from Indigenous cultures and then used a racial slur for a hashtag to promote their clothing company.
I was in Toronto at the time and having very mirrored conversations with coworkers that I had about the way in which people view Indigenous women, especially in mass media and through the lens of fashion.
It was just really disheartening. But in the same way, it just made me more angry, which is more motivating to be able to push my work farther and be able to advocate for other Indigenous women harder. We decided okay, well, enough is enough. We want to get together and do something. And how do we think about the sovereignty of our cultures, and how do we advocate for the sovereignty over our images and also as our diverse identities as Indigenous women?
Felt like there's so much strength also within our community that we wanted to highlight. So much strength, so much beauty, again, our diversities, our talent, the ways that we make a difference in the world in a good way.
We want to get together and find something that we can make some kind of difference. And we started talking about okay, well, what would we call ourselves? And I suggested that we call ourselves Rematriate.
So the ways that we talk about Rematriate is bringing back those teachings, bringing back that power, and bringing back that recognition of those bloodlines that connect us to our families, to our clans, the way that we're representing ourselves, and once again, kind of repowering the women in our lives.
That kind of work to speak to Indigenous politics or to honor Indigenous women or to rematriate your sets of relations so that you're honoring women, that you are privileging their stories, that you elevate their experiences is a piece of healing.
So for the collective, we wanted to focus on sovereignty over our images and how do we create a platform for Indigenous women to tell their own stories and be able to author and consent to how their images circulate in public.
We're providing the stage for ourselves to represent ourselves the way that we want. We are setting the way for the next generation so that they don't have to deal with the same things that we have been fighting for.
We're providing space for people to be able to self-represent, to tell their own story, and to provide an alternative narrative to what we stand against, which is a negative representation of Indigenous women.
We decided to tip the scales and to try to raise awareness and infiltrate the media with authentic and positive representation of Indigenous women and to turn what was a really negative experience into a positive one.
You know, a lot of that, like physical labor, emotional labor, that falls on Indigenous women all the time. And like we're enraged and like have righteous resentment. And it's not surprising that you see us on the front lines because there's like nowhere else you can be. For me, the word rematriate feels like a tool. It feels like a tool that can be used to mobilize and better articulate from within my own space of knowing as an Indigenous woman.
The Rematriate Collective is a collective of women for women to empower women.
My name is Beth Carter. I'm the curator here at the Bill Reid Gallery, and I would like to acknowledge that the Bill Reid Gallery is located in downtown Vancouver on the unceded ancestral territories of the Squamish, the Musqueam, and the Tsleil-Waututh.
I guess I'm excited because the Bill Reid Gallery is stepping into allowing kind of more younger collectives of artists to kind of hold space in their gallery, and so it's a bit transformative for them. They're kind of learning through this process of inviting people that sit outside of maybe what is brought into the Bill Reid.
We have 4 main curators for the Women in Waterways themed exhibit at Bill Reid Gallery. They are Tiffany Craig, Angela Stemstead, Denver Linkslag, and myself.
So the goals of the exhibition are to bring forward Indigenous ways of knowing around water, especially through a female lens. And what's happened is that there's many different approaches you could take to a discussion about water and the importance of water in the Northwest Coast.
The way that we've thought about kind of intervening with the larger collection at the Bill Reid Gallery has been maybe a way for us to position or elevate Indigenous women's voices.
So the work that we've chosen for the Women in Waterways themed exhibit is mixed media. We've also asked the artists if they would like to engage with the space of Bill Reid Gallery and the person of Bill Reid. We've asked 2 women carvers to make work for the exhibit, and one person is making a mask, one person is making a kind of a jewelry, both of which has an engagement with Bill Reid's practice. So we've asked them to be a quiet intervention in the space, quiet and powerful.
So it will be counteracting this quite patriarchal presentation of Bill's work, and then contrasting it, or enhancing it with women's work.
Water Honors Us is the English title of the exhibition, and we asked self-identifying Indigenous women to apply to the show. I guess the way that I like to work, and a way that I've liked to work within the collective, is to give women agency to show their relationships under their term.
The person that we decided to highlight is Audrey Siegel, who, when we were making this decision, was really solidified in attending some recent protests with the Usotin camp. Featuring a water keeper or somebody who's doing good work in community and standing up for the land, standing up for the water, is a model that we took from a rematriate exhibit that was held in the Yukon Territory, led by Janine Frey and Julie. She featured also another keeper of the land, somebody who works really well in their community, or in her community in Gwich'in Territory.
And women in the community were also the medicine keepers, the doulas. All of that is based around water. As a medicine keeper, you need water to grow your medicine. As a doula, you were born through water. The exhibition is to show the strength of women as water keepers and matriarchs. And it is also to show that we are a collective body who support one another and that we're not separated by boundaries.
I think we are able to bring forward many different stories by working with the Rematriate Collective, and it's such a great experience for us.
Water is life.
We're connected to water and the land through our worldview. For instance, when we talk about moving in the land, we talk about ourselves as water. So we move from one place to another, like the river. We move upstream or downstream, and that's a direct translation in our language.
The relationship, the direct and inseparable connection between women and water, it's responsible for every one of our lives, that we are in our mother's body. We live in a water that our mother's body creates to nurture us, to keep us safe, to protect us.
We are the land. We're connected to the land. We're part of the land. Our languages come from the land. We come from the land.
The reason the devastation has been allowed to happen here on this land is because the people who are devastating it have no connection to their own homelands. The reason they bring in military, like up at the Gedempten checkpoint and Unistoten most recently, is because they don't understand our connection to the land. It's a nuisance and it's an inconvenience. We need to get in there. We need to build this, we need to dig that, we need to take this down.
There's a relationship for Indigenous people and the land, and for our communities it can be termed as sacred, a relationship. It also is a bit disrupted and broken due to colonization, residential schools, and so I think this kind of like returning back to the land is a way of healing for Indigenous people.
My voice represents the voices of those who are unable to speak for themselves. That's a big job, and I don't take it lightly, and I say that with no ego at all. I've paid a big price to do this work, and I will continue to pay that price as long as it is my work to do. That these opportunities that I have been afforded to go out and reach international platforms for the water and the importance of the water to all life on the planet, I don't take that lightly.
It's important to advocate for the protection of our lands and waters, and to do that throughout territories, like inside and outside of Indigenous lands, because like on a global scale, like we're all seeing the repercussions.
That means you respect the water, you respect the trees, you respect all the life on the land. It seems like a daunting task, but if each person starts with just little things, get a reusable straw, you have a reusable cup, don't buy plastic where you Don't buy plastic where you don't have to. Don't drink plastic water bottles.
We've been doing this in this place and being asked by our ancestors to fiercely care for this portion of land that has been bought. We fought to keep this portion of land, and we continue to fight to keep this portion of land.
I need every person to reconnect to themselves, to reconnect to their people, to find a way, if at all possible, go back and put your feet on your ancestors' land. Walk where your women walked. Put your feet in those waters. If there are trees still there, go to those trees. Go breathe that air. If there are medicines there, if you know what your people wore, if you know what your people ate, if you know the words that your ancestors spoke, eat that food, wear those clothes, speak those words. Oh, he